Hey, RetconRaider here, with special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Revenant, Matthew Smith, Eloise, A Nerd in Warpaint, Dragon Matrix 7, Eerie V23, Excelsior, Gottlieb, Kazorm, Lima, Nathan Welch Jr., Thomas Pietkowski, Trip Hop and Skip, and Valenrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, let's get started. And welcome back to Werewolf the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest. As we settle in for what I believe is the final chapter of this werewolf tale. And, while Chapter 4 was somewhat overwhelming, ultimately I think it boiled down to a crash course in the basics of the setting. And to be fair, it was done in a way that would also simulate how overwhelming it would have been for Maya to have all of this dumped on her in what, like 24 hours? It is intriguing, though, because aside from covering things like tribes and packs and whatnot, it did also really kind of highlight that there are no clear-cut good guys in this setting. The wild and the worm are both portrayed as destructive extremes on two opposite ends of the same spectrum. And Maya is just suddenly caught between them, trying to find some semblance of balance for her new life. Anyway, let's see how this all wraps up, shall we? Chapter 5. The Plan. Loose ends. I wake up in my bed in the B&B, and for a moment, thought the whole werewolf business had been a dream. Then I heard a giggle, looked up, and saw Anya looking at me with a grin. "Girl, you sure know how to party. You were gone for 2 days." She shook her head. "Was Bartek with you? He's not returning my calls." Yeah, there is a lot to talk about. Though I am glad to see that Anya survived. That was by no means a guaranteed thing. I didn't know where to start. How was I? "I'm all right. Sorry for disappearing so suddenly," I said. Because what else could I say? I told a version of the truth. I got lost in the forest. Technically, that part wasn't a lie. Then I stumbled on the activists, and I kind of got carried away. And what about Bartek? That's actually an interesting bit, because I was puzzling over that from Chapter 3 and 4. And I think ultimately Bartek was part of the group that ambushed us towards the end of that whole fight, when we were running low on willpower and finally started fighting back. And I do wonder if he would have survived if we had just run at that point. I think the huddled figure we chose not to kill was actually Anya. How should I handle the Bartek thing? I couldn't tell her that he was dead, that I'd killed him. "I don't really know where Bartek is right now," I said, my voice trembling a bit. Anya looked at me like she sensed something was wrong. Oh, and we only have 1 point of willpower again. We cannot burn that. I couldn't stand or stare. "I told you, I have no clue where he is," I repeated, my rage suddenly flaring. Anya's lips started trembling, and she locked herself in the bathroom, tears in her eyes. That feels... what? No, that feels like an overreaction. "So are you leaving?" asked Anya, apparently coming back from the bathroom. "But what about your family history?" I didn't know how to answer. I shrugged. Whatever the answer was, it was now Maya the werewolf's problem. Maya the student was dead. "I'll be in touch," Anya hugged me over the whole bathroom thing. "You'll figure it out." I sighed, took my bag, and left. Obviously, the whole thing with the bathroom was just sort of a misfiring flag. But overall, we get the idea, so it's fine. I'm glad she survived. Everything according to plan. I dropped my bags in the camp and ran through the plan one more time. They expected me to act like a Philodex, and we'd also discussed other plans, both more sophisticated. Oh, intriguing. So there were 5 potential paths we could have unlocked, and our specific course of actions unlocked 3. Spiritualism, propaganda, and retribution. And then, obviously, we have violence and cunning? Would that have been cunning? Maybe propaganda was cunning. Interesting. Oh, they no longer have our mental traits listed. That would have made it easier to figure out. But we do have 3 points of honor, so I guess that's something. I mean, obviously, I feel like our course is pretty well set at this point. We maxed out analytical, so it wouldn't really make sense to suddenly embrace the spirits or start weaving colorful tales. Our lot is apparently to be the judge, jury, and possibly executioner. We are the Philodex, justice, retribution. Though ultimately I'm concerned about our low willpower. I really hoped we'd be going into this with more. My big concern here is that we might start falling into a death spiral once we start failing checks, which obviously is less than ideal. Follow the money. With Olga's pack's local connections and Cornell's pack's technological wizardry, we followed the money and found out who was paying the loggers and security guards. Behind all the ideology and politics, it was all just business. We had to stop the money flowing. They were cutting down trees because someone was paying them to do it. We would put a stop to that. Finally, we were ready. Hey, that helps. A little. After a few days of stakeouts and preparations, we identified our target and were ready to move. We started with a kidnapping. Sure, as you do. Blind justice. We let him out in the middle of the forest. Do we have enough will for this? I took the lead. I yanked the bag off the man's face. Cornell lifted a flashlight and shined it in his eye so he couldn't see us. The man reeked of fear and sweat. I knew him. And that was going to be a problem, because the man behind the local logging industry was Bartek's father. But that didn't matter. Our personal connections didn't matter. That night I wasn't a person, but a Philodox. Gaia's justice. The man whimpered and shielded his eyes. It was time to deliver my message. I explained how things were. Here's the deal. You stop the logging, I explained as clearly as I could. And in return, you and your family can enjoy a safe future. One without strange accidents, fires, and misfortunes. He almost shat his pants. I could smell it. But he decided to play the tough guy. "Fuck off, you bitch!" he yelled. "I'm gonna make your life a fucking misery. Just you wait. I know the chief of police. I know MPs. You won't get away with this. Who do you think you are?" "Oh, I'll show you who I am," I said quietly. I felt Cornell tense by my side. But he said nothing. Just watched. Oh boy, okay. If we change without spending will, we might kill him. Oh gosh, okay, yeah. I took a deep breath and focused. I changed. I hope we really don't need more willpower. And you know what? I think we'll go for Glabro because I feel like Krynos would absolutely murder him. And I don't see turning into a dog really accomplishing much. I was Glabro, the near-human form. My muscles spasmed and rearranged themselves. My jaw cracked and my mouth filled with blood. I clenched my fists and claws drove into my palms. Panting and whimpering, I changed. I was more than human, wolfish, strong, scary. I know who you are, I growled in a deep, inhuman voice. A small, sad, fat man who's only good at owing money and being despised by his own wife. I could smell his fear. I was glad. I know where you live, I growled. I know when you sleep and I know when you wake up. We're watching your every move. He looked me in the eyes, transfixed, like a deer caught in the headlights. His lower lip started to tremble. Run, I kicked him. I said run! The night was still young. I hunted him for long hours, confident that I would easily find the man, no matter what trick he tried. And here we go. But he knew the forest well. He dodged, he turned, and before I could get my bearings, he was gone. I stood there panting. Cornell came to my side. Shit, he said. The sky was getting brighter. The forest was waking up. Yeah, this is not great. What doesn't kill us? I couldn't sleep that night. Punishing the local lobbyist was supposed to be my rite of passage, and I failed. What would be the consequences? I didn't know, and that scared me. We met soon after the sunrise. We were in the same clearing where I woke up that first time as a Garou. Lisa looked at us all and sighed. Her patrons were looking at her expectantly. So she stepped towards the center of the clearing. I am the Theurge of this sept, and I'm here to make sure we do things the right way. I held my breath. She turned to me, and I held my breath. Maya, come forth. Are you a cub who seeks recognition as an adult? I am, I answered solemnly. Are you an applicant to a tribe? Lisa asked again. I confirmed. I am, I answered. Who speaks for the cub? Lisa looked at her sept mates. I do. Cornell stepped forward. I'm blind prophet of the children of Gaia, Philodex of the Winter Weasel Pack. I observed the cub on her mission, and I'm here to tell the story. Blind prophet? Really? Did they all have secret werewolf names? I shook my head, thinking the whole thing had strong cult vibes. Has the cub passed her challenge? Asked Lisa. No, I don't think I did. I sagged, knowing that I'd failed. She failed, was the inevitable answer. But she fought bravely against overwhelming odds, and I think she's ready. I wondered what would happen next. So what now? I asked. Should I pack my things and go home, or what? We should have spent more time teaching the cub, and tested her when she was ready. Lisa gave Olga her I told you so look. There was no time, Olga snapped. I waited in silence. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I bit my tongue and struggled to stay quiet. I'll vouch for her. Cornell put his hand on my arm. The challenge was unfair, and she did well for a cub. I waited. So be it. said Lisa after a while. But if anything goes wrong, the cub is your responsibility. Lisa turned to me. Have you chosen your name? My new secret name. I suddenly remembered my grandfather talking about his old friends. He never used their real names. They were always Thunder or Gray or Needle. I'd always thought it was a guerrilla thing, some kind of war names. Now I wasn't so sure anymore. How to capture my whole life, my aspirations, my personality, my heritage in one name? I cleared my throat. Interesting. Well, right off the bat, I think we can rule out Pine. As we've portrayed her, Maya is still trying to cling to some aspects of her old life, as difficult as that might be. And Scala is probably out as well. Our willpower has fluctuated way too much to be a sturdy rock. So really, I think it comes down to Mist or Enigma. And while both are somewhat painfully generic, I feel like Enigma might accurately represent how perpetually bewildered we've been by everything. My new name is Enigma, I answered, thinking how I was a mystery, even to myself. Sure, you go with that. Choosing the tribe was another matter. Hey, look at that. We do have an option aside from Black Furies and Children of Gaia. No Red Talons, no, Sibarak. Or whatever Kim was. Bone Gnawers, maybe? But that's fine. Glasswalkers is the one tribe I'm semi-familiar with, so... Again, given how we portrayed Maya, I think that one makes sense. I'm sure Pat'll be thrilled. Though, I guess this would technically make her, what, my mentor? She's the only Glasswalker here. After getting to know all of them better, I decided to become a Glasswalker. Pat did indeed agree to mentor me. Only one thing remained to end the ceremony and make me a full-fledged guru. I had to join a pack. Yeah, and all things considered, I feel like it's best to clean break from the mourning wolf mother. Maya had a meltdown from just killing one dude by accident. I think Winter Weasel is more her style. I joined Cornell's pack and chose the Winter Weasel as my patron. And so, it was done. According to ancient rites, Lisa painted the mystical glyph of my tribe on my sternum. It disappeared after a moment, but whenever I closed my eyes, I could feel its warm touch between my breasts. Enigma of the Glasswalker. Philodex of the Winter Weasel Pack. Welcome to our sept, she said solemnly. Then she howled. Howls rose toward the sky. They sang about ancient laws of war, status, and secrecy. I remembered only a few. Combat the worm wherever it dwells and whenever it breeds. Submit to those of higher station. Respect those beneath you. The veil shall not be lifted. I joined the song. I threw my head back and howled with my sept. I was a cub no more. I was ready to tell my own stories. To earn my own place in the pack. To howl my own songs. Alright, well that sort of worked out. Oh, Chapter 6, The Storm. Okay. I thought Chapter 5 was it, but apparently we've got one more in the queue. I wonder if you could actually fail your rite of passage. Like, if we had not built up our relationship too loyal with Cornell, would he have declined to back us up when we were explaining how we had failed to to carry out our assigned mission. Anyway, yeah, we're only 20 minutes in, so let's keep going. Chapter 6. The Storm. Dust to dust. It was one of those blistering summer days when the asphalt melts, the grass withers, and the air smothers those brave enough to step outside. Despite the heat, it felt like the whole village was at the funeral. Oh boy. It was moving. I stood there, surrounded by people weeping over their loss, looking at the rosaries they clutched in their fists. Something tightened in my chest. For a brief, chilling moment, I thought I saw Bartek's face among the crowd, but no. I buried him in the barrows myself. And nobody there even knew that he was dead. It was someone else's funeral. Bartek was not the reason we gathered in the churchyard. The body of a hunter had been found in the forest. The circumstances of their death were unclear. It was our doing. It was our doing, my doing, and the death had tipped the scales. Did they die because they deserved it? Or did they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? In the company of someone who couldn't hold her temper? Was that justice or yet another sin demanding to be avenged? I could feel the tension seething around me. This death, this funeral had pushed the community, already weary and frightened by the recent disappearances in the forest, to the edge. The world was watching. The press had swarmed to the funeral like flies. They were reporting on how the illegal logging was a danger to both the ecosystem and human lives. The police were watching the crowd with disinterest as they leaned lazily against the trees. It had become political. Suddenly, Puszcza Białowieska had become politically charged in the hottest place to be in Poland. And it wasn't only local politicians and activists from both sides who'd caught wind of the commotion. The Minister of Environment himself had driven to Białowieża to attend the funeral. He was standing next to the priest conducting the ceremony, surrounded by police and what looked like a handful of bodyguards. The coffin went down and the crowd stirred. Everyone started lining up to throw a handful of dust on the coffin, or put flowers on the grave. I found myself face to face with Anya. I got swept by the crowd and found myself face to face with my friend. Everyone keeps pretending that he's just missing, but I know that Bartek is dead. She looked me in the eyes. He was such a cute guy, you know? It must be hard for you, too, she patted my arm. If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me. I said nothing. I had not the will to speak. I just didn't know what to say. Anya shook her head. One more thing. I know you think you're helping, but have you ever asked anyone what they need? I looked over her shoulder at the crowd. It was clear that many people there felt we were not helping. On the contrary. And the minister knew how to use that sentiment. I listened in disbelief. I watched as the priest handed him the mic. He wasn't someone you'd call a good speaker. He repeated some platitudes, but it was clear he'd only come to show his face and tighten the leash on the local logging companies. The crowd listened. Silent. It was our move. I realized the conflict was only going to escalate from here. Our plans to cut local funding had backfired, and the locals might turn on us at any second. But we were ready to defend ourselves. The last stand. It was high noon. The sun was at its most merciless, and the world was almost white with heat. The air smelled of herbs, bark, and tree sap. Insects buzzed lazily in the high grass, stunned by the summer sun. We were setting up the protest. The day was stifling as we set up. The whole clearing was decorated with banners, and we all had our placards. The banner we'd hung on the National Park headquarters the week before was just a warm-up. "Wood is the enemy of the forest" was our main slogan, but there were many more. I tried to write something constructive. "Make the whole Puszcza a national park," demanded my sign. It was a viable solution. At least I thought it was. The whole Puszcza would be protected, and people could still earn money on tourists. There weren't so many of us, but everyone in the clearing knew why they were there. The Puszcza didn't care. The Puszcza didn't care for us, not anymore. Compared to her, we were like mayflies. 1 second there, a second later, gone. But her fate was in our hands, and we could, second after second, save or destroy the primordial forest. I thought about my family. For centuries, my family had served the Puszcza, burning villages and hunting down people who dared to hurt her. And now I was the last guru of my lineage. What legacy did I want to leave behind? The pressure was almost palpable, and tempers were flaring. I looked at my pack. "Should we run over the plan again?" Cornell asked, looking at my pack. "I'll keep jamming their communication," nodded Pat. "And we'll coordinate the protesters," added Cornell. I glanced at the other pack. The wolf mother and her cubs were in their positions, guarding the forest and the perimeter of the camp, as agreed. That left the cops to me. Oh, good. It's not too late to negotiate. I hope. "I think that we should keep talking," I said. "It's not too late for a peaceful solution." "It's always worth trying," Cornell agreed. The cops were gathering. The police were nervous, huddling in groups and shouting at each other and everyone who was in their way. They clearly didn't want to be there. Something was up. It was apparent that they were waiting for something. Then it reached a boiling point. When the minister arrived for a photo op, we'd attracted some attention. In fact, it looked like we'd attracted a lot of attention, for better or worse. I knew he was in for a nasty surprise. The reporters closed in on him, shooting uncomfortable questions about the legality of the logging and his forestry policy. In hindsight, you could argue that what happened next set a chain of events in motion that had life-changing consequences for many. But change didn't happen just like that. There's this notion that change is sudden. Movies and video games would have us believe that it takes one moment, one decision, one knock-on effect to turn the tide. But the world doesn't work like that. It works like a forest. Like the Puszcza. Change is like growth. Change is a slow, barely visible process. A series of decisions, yes, but also coincidences. Of chances being taken and people doing what they can to survive. Change is like growth. And we had grown. The members of my sept had already moved to their positions, and I also had my part to play. Oh. We have one last chance to negotiate, but we only have the one willpower. Dare we exhaust ourselves once more? And a chance for a slightly happier ending? I mean, they are stressing that we may have already done enough to get some semblance of a positive outcome. We have the sympathy of the police. We have the press on our side. That could be enough to eke out like a neutral ending at least. But we could push for more. No, let's hang back for now. We'll play it safe. With him at the scene, everything will get harder, I sighed, pointing at the minister. Cornell nodded. Do we have other options? I wasn't ready to give up, though. Oh, crud. Okay, that just looped us right back to the same previous decisions with no option to back out now. That is not what I was hoping for. Alright, I guess we'll ask him to stop, put him on the spot. We have him on the spot, I wondered. I'd like to try again and ask him to stop the logging. Okay, yeah, that's what I want. Cornell grabbed me by the elbow. Let's go, he hissed into my ear. We might be able to talk to him. We pressed through the swarm of journalists. There were a lot of them. The heat and the smell of their sweaty bodies were intense, and when we got close to the minister, it became even more pronounced. There was an acrid tang hanging around him like a mist. I caught his gaze. The minister looked at us, and Cornell opened his mouth. "Get them out of here," snarled the minister, and turned his back to us. I shook my head and laughed bitterly. What was I expecting? That the worm feeder would want to listen to us? Cornell touched my shoulder. We'll find another way. We went back to regroup. Kaiser, I'm right here, Bibu. The activists, humans, and werewolves alike listened as we told them what had happened. The atmosphere was tense. We started our preparations. We prepared ourselves for the worst-case scenario. Okay, let's move, I heard someone shout. Move it, people, move it. You know what to do. And they did. There was a lot of laughter and friendly pushing, chains clinking, and some people darted up to the trees to seat themselves in the branches. Okay, and we cannot do that because we burned our last willpower point. Fantastic. Unfortunately, that may have been a critical misstep. Accidentally looping ourselves back into trying to confront the minister. Hey, Kaiser. I helped us to form a human chain. Hey, I heard. Get those arms behind you. That's it. Attaboy. It hurts, moaned a man's voice. Next time, do some yoga beforehand, huh? That's it, people. Open your hearts so you can hold your wrists behind your backs. I threaded my arms through the arms of the people to my left and right, and then grabbed my wrists behind my back. It was tight on my shoulders, hot and very sweaty. Then, we waited. We sat down, one long human chain, and watched the loggers and police as they approached, and then stopped. The sun shone, and it was calm, almost serene. It worked. Oh, okay. The talk started there and then. I could see that the minister was an apt politician, and that he could smell a deal for himself in it all. But I didn't really care. We'd gotten what we wanted. We started to talk. Peace talks. When the talk started, we weren't alone. Luckily, our failed attempt to manipulate events from behind the scenes hadn't ruined our chances. There'd been some consequences, but we'd managed to work around them. So we started talking, and it became big. I don't know what tipped the scales in the end. The press, the international attention, the local interest coming together, our passion. The talks weren't easy. But finally, an agreement was within our reach. The state forests, the woodworkers, the local population, ecologists, scientists, activists, everyone wanted something. I was by no means an expert, but I wanted to play my part in the proceedings. I made sure the talks were fair. I observed the talks and made sure everything was okay. Both sides could use someone unbiased, with an analytical approach. The talks went on and on. Of course, I had my opinions. Everyone at the scene had their own opinions and their own point of view, and I had mine. Let's take the bark beetle. In the middle of it all, of course, was the spruce bark beetle. How could something so small cause such a gigantic uproar? The beetle had always been a part of the forest ecosystem, pointed out one of the ecologists. But the recent droughts made the spruce more susceptible than ever, the foresters countered. We have to cut down the trees to stop a total disaster. I saw one problem with this approach. Oh, goodness, come on. I didn't trust the officials. I didn't trust a word that came out of the officials' mouths. The beetle was not a reason for the logging. It was an excuse. You fetishize the forest, scoffed one of the officials. People cultivated it for hundreds of years, and it cannot survive without our help. He's right. You want to take our forests from us, a group of locals attacked the activists. You're not from here, and you tell us how to live our lives. Yet, they were the ones who had unbalanced the ecosystem. The problem was that human intervention unbalanced the ecosystem, and if they pushed it any farther, they'd lose all that made the Pushcha unique. Opinions clashed, tempers flared, but eventually new, constructive ideas started to emerge. At least one of them caught my attention. The whole area should be declared a national park. There was a recurring idea to make all forests in the area a part of the Białowieża National Park. The logging would be impossible, but there would be much more money from tourism. It was a long and hot day. I rubbed my eyes. I was so tired I could barely keep them open. My head was spinning. But I kept going, because it turned out that health was the only thing I had left to spare. I kept going. What was a little heat stroke when so much was at stake? The talks continued. Of course, they had to make it dramatic. There were cameras, there were lights, and the negotiations lasted all day long. We reached the first draft of an agreement, literally at sunset. I had no doubts. They'd only decided to stop the logging because they realized there was something in it for them. But I felt relief. At that moment, I just looked at the sky and laughed. I felt overwhelming relief. And then my exhaustion caught up with me. I found a quiet spot, sank to the ground, and fell asleep. Epilogue. Quiet before the storm. Wow, okay. Obviously not much of a climax. I was hoping for a cleaner win, but that became impossible the second we lost that last point of willpower. Still, we managed to inadvertently stumble our way into at least forestalling the impending confrontation between the wild and the worm. At least that's how I'm reading this. I think much like with our rite of passage, because we had garnered sympathy with the right people, the press, the police, it really helped to sort of cover up the numerous missteps that we also made in the course of trying to resolve this whole situation, which is intriguing. Obviously not the best we could have hoped for, but also far from the worst. And I guess I can live with that. The next morning, cheering of the crowd woke me up. It was a victory, after all. Cool, thanks for the willpower. A bit late, but I'll take it. We'd won. The Pushcha was safe, at least for the time being. People were excited, antsy, full of emotions. If the loggers hadn't left, they probably would have charged at them. But now there was no one to fight, so we partied instead. Soon we were all dancing, talking, singing, and in some cases making out in the shadows. I had to stop someone from making a fire. I mean, for fuck's sake, we were in the middle of the forest during a drought. But my friends didn't join in the festivities. They just sat on the logs, looking at the humans with weary eyes. I joined them. I found my pack. We sat in the shadows, far from the humans. Look at them, sighed Cornell. Loud, messy, stupid. Tomorrow this place will look worse than if we'd let them do the logging. I smiled. Look on the bright side. The trees are still standing, I said. And we'll pick up the trash tomorrow. I'm not here to pick up their trash, he growled. Well, nobody said it would only take one battle. Today, we won, he smiled faintly. And maybe the humans won't ruin it that fast. I smiled again. I was satisfied. Time would tell who was right. Under the trees. We gathered in the clearing in which I'd first woken up as a guru. Lisa stood in the middle of the clearing, the wolf and the weasel by her side. Now, she said, looking at Cornell and Olga, you two, you need to solve this. Today. Olga nodded. There was sadness in her eyes. You were right, she said to Cornell. I'm sorry. That night, we planned the future. The night was long and full of hope. Olga and Cornell reached an agreement. Olga talked with Cornell for a very long time, and later that night they asked us to join them. They decided they wanted to lead our pack together as a leading pair, just like in real wolf packs. Lisa and our patrons made sure that we did right by Guru law, and the Sept matters were resolved. But more had happened that summer. It didn't cover everything that had happened that summer, so some consequences would have to unravel with time. Daniel introduced me to the wolves. Later, Daniel introduced me to the wild wolf packs living in the forest. We would spend a lot of time with them, searching for the lost Guru cubs we hoped were out there. And Anya was alive. Despite everything that had happened, Anya managed to get out of it all alive. She tried to help the Pushcha and work in activism for some time, but it was hard in the divided community. She left in the fall to study, just as she'd planned. But it was all still ahead of me. For now, the first chapter of my new life was coming to an end. I'd come here to learn about my roots. And I succeeded. I dug my hands deeper into my pockets. My family had fought the humans who'd invaded the forest for generations. And now there I was, making pacts of non-aggression with the loggers. Was I a traitor? Or was I the one who'd finally got it right? The quiet before the storm. Your story is almost over. This might be a good time to take the last look at your character sheet. Sure, why not? let's see where we ended up. Maya Enigma Borodich, age 24, profession student. I feel like that ship might have sailed at this point. American, breed Hamid. Hospice Philodex, the Judge. Rank Cleeth. Tribe Glasswalkers, Pack. Winter Weasels. And we got about halfway up the honor track. That's not terrible. Goodness knows it certainly could have been worse, and it does maintain our theme of balance, I suppose. Man, what a fascinating game. I can't help but wonder how many different ways it could have gone. And I mean, we did get our main goal resolved. We did find out about our family. And then stop the logging, which was sort of our secondary goal, I suppose. Even if it is just a temporary victory. Hey, look at that. The Pushcha came around. It is once again sympathetic. Yeah, I mean, you know, overall, I think I'm pretty happy with these results. Aside from the Bartek thing, poor guy. He really did not deserve to be decapitated. But such is the world of Werewolf. Even when you win, it is temporary at best. That is why it's called Werewolf the Apocalypse. The apocalypse is inevitable. Alright, let's, I guess we'll wrap this up. This has been a fun ride, but I think we're just about done, as the tutorial has not so subtly spelled out for us. The clearing was empty and full of sunlight. The harvesters were gone, leaving the scars of their tracks behind. People were cleaning up the campsite, making plans to turn the temporary protest site into a permanent tent town. I took a deep breath. The air was sweet and smelled of coming rain. The upturned soil smelled of turf and the sweet aroma of decay. There would be a storm later that day. I could feel it. A faint, sharp layer of electricity surrounding the wetness. I smiled. I liked my new sense of smell. "This is not the end," said the weasel. "I assume you know that." I sighed. Of course I knew. It was just a momentary break. A truce that both sides needed to regroup and reinforce. Yeah, I know. I sighed, looking around. I had something else on my mind. There was a squirrel somewhere. I could smell it. I wanted to chase it. To run, to feel the thrill of adrenaline rushing through my veins. But I couldn't spot it. It mocked me from the branches above, squeaking curses in its squirrel tongue. I couldn't see it. But I ran, anyway. I was Lupus, the wolf form. I doubled down in pain, my arms and legs cracked and twisted. My skull fractured and reset itself in a different shape, fragments of bone crawling under the skin. My skin was rippling, sprouting fur. I howled in agony. When the pain subsided, I was Lupus, a wolf, seeing the world in smells and sounds. So I ran. Just for the thrill of it. The end. You have finished Heart of the Forest. Cubs, gather round the fire and listen to the story of Maya Borodich, known among the Garou as Enigma of the Glasswalkers, Philodex of the Winter Weasel Pack. Her judgments were always honorable. Maya managed to negotiate a fragile peace and stop the harvesters. But would it hold? The first protests against the logging of the Białowieża forest took place in 2016. The game was loosely inspired by those events. All characters and events depicted in this game are entirely fictitious. Well, I would certainly hope so. Otherwise, I might be a bit concerned. Hello, Kaiser. I see you have occupied the space in front of me the second I lifted my hands. Yes, it's good to see you too. What a fascinating game. Granted, the finale was obviously a bit of a dud, but I think that's really more of a reflection of my own often flawed pursuit of a more balanced approach in a world that is obviously defined by violent and destructive extremes, both the wild and the worm. And you could clearly see several other paths we could have followed, which might have led to a more exciting or satisfying or clear-cut victory. But as I said before, I'm pretty happy with this ending. I feel like in a lot of ways it does reflect what the old World of Darkness was about. Very tenuously maintaining a status quo as opposed to any sort of clear-cut victory, or even worse, a clear-cut defeat. You know, the World of Darkness wasn't about winning. You could never really win in the old World of Darkness. The Apocalypse, the Reckoning, they were all inevitable. The best you could generally hope for was that you would live to continue fighting another day. And that is exactly what we did here. So yeah. I feel like that's an adequate ending to a tale of this nature. Anyway, my throat is melting, so let us hastily bring this video to a close. Let me know what y'all thought in the comments down below, or if you'd like to see me explore more series like this one in the future. And of course, if you enjoyed this series, then I would strongly encourage you to go check out the game for yourself. See what path your version of Maya ends up walking. As always, links are in the description. Yes, Kaiser, I can pay attention to you now. Hey, cutie. Let me get you some treats.